G'day guys, welcome back to Red Time. I'm Jared Barker, Jake Michaels is with me and we're here to discuss all the latest hot topics evolving in the world of AFL. Jake, welcome. You're not feeling too well, a bit nervous about the game tomorrow night, are you?
A little bit actually, but no, I woke up feeling awful this morning, so might be a shorter episode today as my voice is going to struggle through this one.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for you just to try it and hang low. It is Thursday afternoon already, and there is a game tonight, so we are going to crack in. Speaking of Thursday night footy, Jake, there's a game tonight, but the AFL officially released the fixture for rounds 16 through to 23 during the week, and there won't be any Thursday night footy during that period, which has been met with heavy criticism from a lot of fans. Do fans have a right to be upset, and do you think it's a mistake on the AFL's behalf to abandon Thursday night footy moving forward?
Oh, there's a few questions there, and I think the answer to all of them is probably the yes. I mean, it is. I think the AFL's missed by not including them in the back end of the year, and the fans do have a right to be annoyed by it. I mean, the sport is for the fans, is it not?
Oh, look, I might be the only person or the only footy fan who doesn't give one iota about this. I think Thursday night footy in general
You don't like
is
Thursday
just,
night footy?
No, I like it. I just think it's overrated. I don't see the big deal about not having Thursday night footy later in the season.
So what do you do? What do you like to do on a Thursday night?
I just don't care. Oh, it's going to be nice tonight. It's obviously Thursday today. I'll go home, not working, kick the feet up,
And you'll watch.
and watch the footy
And you've
because
watched-
it's on. Because it's on. Yeah, but I don't care if it's not on as well. So I'll provide you the counter.
Have you watched every Thursday night game so far this year live?
I think so. Yeah. I
See,
can't
that's
remember the last
staggering to
10
me.
weeks,
That's
but-
staggering to me.
Why?
Because I don't know
Who cares?
anybody that
Who cares?
doesn't like Thursday night football. I've not met someone that says it's a
there's a lot
trash
of fans-
idea and it doesn't work.
There are a lot of people who say they struggle to get there when they're getting up early to work on a Thursday.
That's
They find
okay,
it
but
hard.
they still watch it on TV. It's got to be one or the other.
Of course, but what do you favour? Is it about the fans at home, or is it about trying to rock up to games? And what does the AFL actually
I mean,
prefer?
the broadcast
That's what it comes
is going
down
to be.
to.
The broadcast is always obviously, ideally, you want to fill the stadium and have as many people watching it as possible. But the broadcast is always going to be the big thing. And look, as I said, I think it's a bit of a miss that they aren't doing any. From rounds, 16 to 23, that we've got none. I think that's a miss because it's not just that we don't have a Thursday game. That's not the whole pie. The part of it is that bothers me is that we now have far more overlap with our other games, particularly on Saturday.
What's wrong with that?
Well, it just means you can't watch the games. You can't watch all of the games.
How many people in Australia are watching all 9 games across the weekend? And you can only use the overlapping argument if you genuinely do watch all 9 games. And I know you do, and a lot of people who working in the media do.
You can use that argument if you're only watching 2 that overlap. If you want to watch 2 games and they're on at the same time, how can you watch them?
I think we cater for that now, though, right? With streaming, and
But you still
it's
can't watch.
quite
Well, you can have one
accessible.
on the TV and one on your phone.
Oh, sure. If
No.
you really want to watch all the games. But my main concern with it, and again, I don't care that much, but if I am to play the devil's advocate, I think later in the season, obviously harder to attend these games during the winter, and it's worse weather, of course. Probably, not as good for families to go and rock up during those conditions. But I think later in the seasons, when the games are really starting to ramp up and teams are jostling for finals positions and top 4 spots, you don't want teams, those bigger clubs, the teams at the top of the ladder, have coming off a 5-day break going into a Thursday game. I don't think that's actually fair when it gets to this late in the season. That's another point that I would say. And I think those breaks do matter. I know the teams and the coaches won't tell you that.
See, now that's
that it makes
something
a
I
difference.
think is overrated. And I think
The 5-day breaks.
Yeah, and I think the numbers suggested this.
5 versus 7, I think it
Christian,
matters.
we did a Mythbusters on this a few years ago, where we proved that those breaks don't mean an awful lot. So I can't subscribe to that. I think Thursday
I don't think the
night
AFL
footy
wants
needs
that, though.
And the weirdest, the last point on this, the strangest part of it to me is the AFL's pretty much said this is a success, this fixture, and we're going to do more of it in the future. But we're not going to do it at the end of this year. That to me is strange. I don't understand why we can love it but not want to do it this year.
I think there's a lot of things to be upset about in footy.
frustrating.
I don't think the Thursday night fixturing is one of them.
Should the Western Bulldogs be compensated after Aidan O'Driscoll was medically retired during the week?
Really sad stuff with Aidan O'Driscoll. Obviously pick 55 in last year's draft, so drafted in November, career over in May. It's quite heartbreaking, to say the least. And look, I'll say no, because it's not usually what happens. I don't know if it should happen, but Melbourne and Collingwood have lost players this year as well to retirement. Obviously, Nathan Murphy and Angus Brayshaw before him. The difference is those players had a history of concussions. Now, O'Driscoll's incident in the preseason was being described as a significant head injury at the time. I think it was in January. So there is a bit of a difference with how it all happened. I believe that was his first footy-related concussion. But again, if we say this for the Dogs, then we have to say that the Pies and the Ds have to be compensated as well. And you can mount the argument that they should be compensated even more because they lost established players and premiership players. So I don't think you can give that sort of favouritism to the Dogs because of this, as sad as it is. But yeah, teams do lose players to injury throughout the year, and they're not the only clubs that are going to have access to the mid-season draft. That is one mechanism that they can go to replenish a list and replace these players as well, now that a spot has opened up by these retirements. So they've got the mid-season draft there. I don't know what the answer really should be, if they do deserve compensation. I don't know where you sit on it. But as we sit right here, I'm a bit... You can't give it to the Dogs and not the Ds or the Pies. So I'm happy with just, no, you got the mid-season draft. See what you can do. See what you can do. Bad luck. Injuries happen.
Yeah, I don't want to come across as cold or heartless, because sometimes maybe I do. But, and it is sad. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. It's horrible. I said after Nathan Murphy a few weeks ago, or a month or whatever it was, I said, we're going to start seeing more of these. And
we will.
I think it's a good thing that we're seeing more. Obviously, it's sad that players can't play out a full career as they would have hoped to do.
Yeah. But
in terms of health, which is paramount, it's good to see this being done now, because this was not the case 10 plus years ago, and we've seen what's shaken out since then. So it's a good thing. Excuse me. It's a good thing that players are doing this now, but I don't think we can compensate. I mean, what happens if a player... Where do you draw the line? Because if a player continually ruptures their ACL and they say, I'm stopping, do we compensate there?
If they retire.
If they retire. Yeah. I just don't know how you can possibly do this and where it can ever be fair. I just think it's unfortunate, but I don't think it's something that we can compensate for.
Yeah, I agree. Difficult situation, and all the best to Aidan O'Driscoll as well. No one wants to be going through that, but as you said, it is becoming a bit of a reality in our sport today. Moving on to your boy, Charlie Curnow. Now, you've heaped praise on him in your 6 points column this week, Jake. He's kicked goals in each of his last 56 games, currently level with Harry Valance for the longest streak by a Carlton player in the history of the game. That was between 1930 and 1933. I'm sure you remember those days very clearly. Now, he's every chance to add to that again on Friday night against the Swans. That's without mentioning his back-to-back Coleman medals as well, and he's well on track to win a third of those. It's begged us to ask the question, Jake, where does Charlie Curnow rank among modern-day key forwards? I'm going to let you take this away, because I know you've got a lot to say about this.
I was very passionate, might be the word, when I brought this idea up a few days ago, and then obviously, as you said, it was written in 6 points, and it's been debated at length on social media over the last couple of days. I've interpreted this question that you've just thrown to me a little differently. So I'm looking at the peak, right? And I think this is what we have to do.
I like how you've found a little angle within the question.
No, because that's how, well, to be honest, that's how I looked at it in 6 points, and that's what I've gone with. And I think it's unfair to say Charlie Curnow is better than insert forward that's played 300 games and has played their full career. We haven't seen his full career yet. So I'm just talking about Charlie Curnow's peak. And it's interesting to point
peak as in just the best of his abilities, or within his career so far?
The peak of his performance that we've seen. So we call that, and by peak I'm not saying a 4-week stretch. I'm talking about a 2 to 3 year span of all these players. What's their best 2 to 3 year span, and where does Charlie sit in amongst that?
And winning the 3 Coleman medals, if he is to do that, is a big part of this consideration.
No one's done that in modern football history. So that's another little wrinkle as well. But he obviously hasn't won 3 yet, so we can't say he has. But he's on track.
And the other pretty good.
And the other thing is, so this is known, is there's no projection here. This is just what he has done. And now he's only 27 years old. I don't think anyone expects he's hit his ceiling. We all think he's going to get better.
Yep.
So he's probably only going to climb higher. But we're not focusing on projection. It's what he's done so far in the last I'll call it 2.5 year period as his peak. I think that's a big enough and strong enough sample size to look at. In terms of forwards since 2000, last quarter century-ish, how many have hit a higher peak? That I have no doubt about it. I think there's only 3 key forwards in that time that have definitely hit a higher peak that no one's going to argue. They're Buddy. No one's going to argue Buddy. Matthew Lloyd. I don't think anyone's going to argue Matthew Lloyd. And Brendan Favola. And I don't think anyone's going to argue Brendan Favola.
Not sure what he's doing there, with all due respect to the great man.
Fev.
Yeah. And by the way, where does Jeremy Cameron sit with
Well, hang
this
on,
right
hang on
now?
a second. So you don't think Brendan Favola deserves to be... Brendan Favola...
I can see it because you're talking about peak, but I don't think he's a better footballer than Charlie Curnow is.
Brendan Favola's peak was 99 goals in 2008 and 89 goals in 2009 to win a Coleman.
Greater goal kicker than Charlie.
That's a pretty good peak.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Greater goal kicker, but not a better footballer.
Okay, well, that's a different story. I don't know. My point with this is I think there's only 3 that I would clearly say have hit a higher peak. And I think that's the peak I'm talking about. In 2 years, he kicked nearly 200 goals, and if it was not for Buddy Franklin, he wins back-to-back Colemans. So I think it's Buddy, Lloydie, and Fev, the only 3 I've got ahead in terms of peak since 2000. Now, you said Jeremy Cameron. Jeremy Cameron's a fantastic footballer. He has been debated as is he the best player in the league at various points over the last couple of years.
The reason why I bring him up is he's equally as dynamic and skillful, I think. And he has more tricks to his game than a Favola does, which is why I put him in this conversation as well. With the things that he can do. Jez, yes. Yeah. Jezza and Charlie, I think, are quite comparable in the sense that they can do a lot on the footy field. They're not just your old-fashioned out of the goal square full forwards. And that's why I say they're better players in general, because they can do more. But your argument is the peak and the goal scoring.
We've got to focus on peak because,
how much do you focus
people are getting
on goals?
Because people are getting carried away thinking I'm talking about career. It is peak.
I get
only.
your argument.
So with Jez, when's his peak? His peak has been thereabouts the same time as Charlie Curnow. Curnow's kicked 34 more goals than him since the start of 2022. So how can we argue and say that Jez's peak is higher when the evidence that says that Curnow not only is higher, but it's significantly higher.
You're looking at peak, which is fine. But if you're looking at the peak and the goals scored, Fev averaged more goals than Buddy over his career. But I don't think he was a better player than Buddy, right? I don't think anyone would be saying that.
Well, Buddy checked both boxes. He checked the brilliance box and the longevity box. Not many players have been able to do
absolutely,
that. Fev was brilliant, but he didn't do it for as long as Buddy, obviously. And if he did, he would have kicked 1,000 goals. I bring
it up because I think all of these forwards, and you've said it as well and admitted it, that they all are different. They bring something different to the table, and when you do acknowledge that they're all got different strengths, you do need to judge them accordingly, which is why I'm taking it all into consideration. But I do at the same time understand what you're saying with the peak, and I agree with your premise that Charlie Curnow probably should be compared to the greatest forwards of the 21st century. Yeah.
And just because I've said those 3, Fev, Buddy and Lloydie, are ahead, they're the 3 I think right now are clearly ahead, and he hasn't reached that level yet. That doesn't mean that everyone else I haven't said, Matthew Pavlich, Jack Riewoldt, Nick Riewoldt, Jonathan Brown, Jeremy Cameron, whoever else you want to throw in there.
Josh Kennedy,
Josh Kennedy, whoever you want. It doesn't mean...
Now, he's more comparable to Fev, by the way.
Hang on. It doesn't mean that all of those players, I'm saying Curnow is miles ahead. I'm saying everyone else, aside from those 3, it's at least a debate. You can go one way or the other. You can convince me it's whoever instead of Curnow. But it's a real debate. And I think and that's the most impressive part of Curnow. His peak... I think he's in that debate for the 4th spot already. And that's what's most incredible. And this is coming down the tracks, and people aren't prepared for this yet. But this will be a debate. So you can look at me and call me stupid for bringing this up now, but
I'm not calling you stupid.
But this will happen in a few months' time when Charlie Curnow, and I'm saying when, because he's going to win another Coleman.
Yeah.
He's going to win another Coleman. He's going to win 3 in a row. He'll be one of, I think, 6 players have done it before him. And you ask the average person to name the 6, they wouldn't have heard of half of them. No one in the modern era has done it. It's something that doesn't happen. If he goes and wins 3 Curnows in a row, 3 Colemans in a row, they might name it to the Curnow.
They might need to, yeah.
If he wins 3 Coleman medals in a row, people will start to ask this question.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, we should already be asking this question now and looking where he ranks. And we've got to be prepared for him to start passing a lot of these greats, And I don't think it's unreasonable to say.
it would be a hell of a feat if he did do it 3 times in a row, and I don't think that is out of the question.
Oh,
I reckon
he's more likely than not.
I think your diagnosis is correct, but maybe your prognosis needs a little bit of work. By the way, how many goals does he kick against the Swans? No Tom McCartan helps.
He hasn't kicked 5 this year, I don't believe. I reckon he'll kick 3. Give him 3.
You tipping the Blues?
Yes, I am.
Really?
I've tipped the Blues every game this year.
Yeah. SAG, tighter ground, contest team.
Yeah, should be a good game.
They're probably a small chance.
Looking forward to it.
No doubt.
Speaking of New South Wales-based teams, the Giants are on a bit of a skid at the moment. Are you going to be worried about their finals chances if they don't right the ship this weekend and they lose to the Bulldogs?
I'm not. Maybe a little bit. I mean, after all we thought about them and what we said about them to start the year, they were 5-0, and now they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. That's a concern in itself. So if they do lose to the Dogs, something has to be said about what they're doing. I mean, this is such a tight season. They've lost 3 of their past 4, as I said, but they're only 1 win ahead of Gold Coast and Freo, who aren't even in the top 8 right now. That's how tight this ladder is and this year is. So
1 win, separating
you'd have to
like
say,
4th
just
and 10th.
looking at the Giants and their best team on paper, it's like, well, no, you can't be concerned. Clearly, we know they're good enough. We've watched them at their best.
They were the number 1 ranked side going into the season, according to some smart people.
Some smart people, yes. But they're not going to be at full strength. We know Toby Green's out of form. There's no Josh Kelly or Lockie Ash for 6 weeks as well. So they are going to be quite on demand. I don't even know if it's knee-jerk. They're out of form, and this is their stats in the last 5 games. Jake, they're 15th for inside 50s, and only Richmond, North, and West Coast are worse. Conversely, the Dogs are 4th in this 5-week stretch, and we know what people have been saying about them as well. So they're not the easiest opponent to be coming up against.
Inflated numbers last week, maybe.
No, not really. 13th for shots on goal, 10th for contested possessions, 15th for clearances. So the numbers aren't fantastic for the Giants, it's fair to say. They haven't really been the best midfield team, but they're coming up against a team who really relishes the contest and likes to possess the ball as the Giants do. But what we've seen from the Swans and the Bombers in the last 2 weeks when coming up against GWS, they've taken that uncontested mark game away from Adam Kingsley. They've taken the outside run out of the Giants game. They've had no flow. The tsunami is completely gone, as we like to refer it. So when they do lose control of the game and that strength is taken away from them, clearly they're quite vulnerable. So I think they're potentially being exposed. And as I said, the Dogs being such a good contest team and getting on top in that area. Yeah. I mean, clearly they've got to be on upset alert, don't they?
Well, they do.
And GMHBA next week against the Cats, who are going to get a few players back as well. That's when it becomes quite concerning. Yeah.
I think you mentioned off the top, it's quite clearly you need to be concerned, whether it's about their finals prospects or whether you think they can win the premiership. I think either way you've got to be concerned.
Losing to these teams that are in contention as well, that's when it starts to slip away from them.
Let's say they lose to the Bulldogs. I don't care if it's by 50 points or 1. Let's say it's an L. They will have lost 4 of 5 games, as you said, off the top. The previous games, you remember what the previous game was? That one, it was the St Kilda game.
1 point, yeah.
1 point that they just died at the end of that and very nearly lost.
So they wouldn't be in the 8 if they lost that game. Yeah.
And then, as you said, with a game to come against Geelong, who should be getting players back for that clash. So it could easily be 5 and 6 without that St Kilda game. Even still, probably 6 and 5, and they're right back in the middle of the pack at the bye or round about the bye. So I think you have to be concerned. The numbers are concerning. You've mentioned the players that they're going to be missing. The obviously Toby out of form,
missing at the wrong time as well. 5 of their next 6 opponents are the Bulldogs this week: Geelong, Port Adelaide, Sydney, and Adelaide.
It's a tough run.
Yep. So I think they're up against it. I'm actually tipping the Giants. I will back them as the home team. I'll give them another chance, but I'm not confident in doing so.
Yeah, I still think they are a side that... I still think they're one of the 4-ish sides that can win the premiership because we know how good their best is.
Yeah, for sure.
And you've got to assume when you take into account your premiership picks and all that, you assume everyone's healthy. You don't account for injuries and form up and down. You just account for everyone playing at their best, who is the best. And I think the Giants, quite clearly, we know that their best can match it with anyone else's best or go very close. So I'm not prepared to be scared off and say they can't win it anymore. But this has to give you some concern for Kingsley, for all Giants fans, for everyone, I think, quite clearly.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty tough game coming up for them this weekend. Now, from the Giants, we look at the Cats. Did you hear his comments last week about the umpires?
Mr. Chris Scott?
Yes.
I did. I also wrote about that in 6 points. Thanks for reading.
Didn't say I didn't read it. Should he be punished for those comments?
Punished? What do you mean? Like fine?
Anything. Punished, yeah.
No, absolutely not. Two things can be true with this incident.
Can they?
I don't think it's silly to call it an incident. It's not his comments.
Press conference.
Chris Scott is a whinger, quite clearly. He could have mentioned this issue that he's had, because it's not just the way it was said. It's not just from this game.
He was asked the question though, generally about the holding ball rules.
I understand, but if he feels
to it.
this passionately and he's this frustrated with it, he could have mentioned this after round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, but he didn't, because they were winning all these games. There was no issue for him. Now they're losing and he's complaining, but he's entitled to, right? Yep. He shouldn't be, just because he's a whinger, just because he's having a sook at the state of umpiring, and maybe he's right. Maybe he's got some valid points there. I'm not saying that he doesn't.
He's well within his rights to judge.
He should be, and I think it's a shame that we've got to the point in the sport with coaches and players where they just can't say anything.
Yeah.
They're afraid to say anything. Look at Sam Draper. We spoke about that the week before. Players and coaches are afraid to say anything because they don't want the blowback and they don't want to be fined, and I understand it. I'd be the same if I was in that position. And I think it's a bad place to be in. I think we want our coaches, especially our senior coaches that have been in the game a long time, that have won premierships. We want our players, our great players, to be able to talk openly and freely about things that they see as real issues in the sport, things that they see that can be improved, and all of that. And I think it's a shame that we've discouraged that. And I really do think that's a problem.
I think, and what we said with Sam Draper was, as long as there's a line that isn't being crossed, which for Chris Scott and coaches is anger and
he's not threatening
abuse or making cheating claims towards the umpires, things like that. Speaking with frustration, that's probably fine, and that's only going to be natural after a game of footy. But as I've said before, interpretations are usually actually correct. It's about knowing and understanding what the rules are. And the AFL did meet with him during the week, maybe to just get on the same page with him.
We don't really know what was said.
Well, we don't, but I guess the whole point is when you do read the rules and the guidelines, umpires are actually doing a better job than people give them credit for. It's not the decisions that are wrong. Maybe it's the rules. So maybe we can judge the rules, but not the umpire's interpretation. Although he is fine to be doing that.
The thing with umpiring is, if there's 30 free kicks in a game that are called, and we say, there were four really crappy free kick decisions, so they got 4 wrong from 30. It's not just they're making 500 decisions in a game, things that aren't free kick. There are more things that they call play on
and
that have to be. That's a decision.
Toughest sport in the world to officiate.
It's extremely tough. So I'm not going to sit here and say the umpires are terrible, blah blah blah. And I don't think Chris Scott was necessarily doing that either. But I like the fact. I want to see these players and coaches being able to talk openly rather than trotting out the usual lines of, because I think it encourages honesty. And I think that's what we want to see. We want to see honesty, and we want these players and coaches talking about what they think are the real issues in the sport.
Yeah, I like him being critical of it. I'm with you, and I think it encourages more conversation. Yep.
North Melbourne GM of footy Todd Viney ruled out the club, asking the AFL for more draft assistance. They're currently 0-9. I think they're 5 and 50 or something like that. Yep. Something just awful. Were the comments from Viney a little premature, or do the Kangaroos need more help from the AFL?
Well, this is what he said on radio during the week, Jake. He said that won't be on the cards when talking about receiving more assistance from the AFL. He said, we received some help last year. We've had 5 picks in the first round last year. We believe we maximised the opportunity with the picks that we got to help us. Those guys are going to be good picks, but they're going to take some time. And that's the last line there is important. It's going to take some time. And we've spoken about North.
Always does.
We've spoken about North the last few weeks, and we've said the same thing. And you're right, 5 of the past 54 matches it is over the past 3 seasons, including the 0-9 stretch of this year. Obviously, yes, they received an assistance package last year. I don't think they need more handouts. I think they've just already got so many young kids there. We can't expect the results straight away. I know it's frustrating because they've been at the bottom for so long, but this rebuild under Clarko needs to be seen as a brand new reset and rebuild altogether. This needs to be treated completely differently. I think, and I've said this before as well, if this midfield group can stay together, your Wardlaws, your Sheasel and McKercher, and they can all grow together, that's going to be the envy of the competition in a few years' time. And we've spoken about taking a leaf out of Carlton's book and trying to stick together like they have, and that's done the Blues wonders now. You look at how good they are.
Yeah.
One of the premiership favourites. So, yeah, while results now are quite grim, we know that things can turn if you've got the right people in place. And I reckon maybe they do. Again, you just got to give them some time, maybe a different strategy instead of getting the draft assistants, like picking up some mature age delisted free agents, which they have done in the past. But whether they've actually picked up the right players
maybe not
is another question. Maybe a Luke Parker if he stays out of favour at the Swans, or a couple of those Dogs boys who are potentially on the fringes as well, a couple that I've looked at. Clearly they need to shore up the back line, but Griffin Logue's been out as well, so that helps them a bit there. So I think there's pieces there to work with. The high-end draft picks have already been used. I think the days of handouts for North in this era are over. Maybe a different strategy is needed, but I'm not against Todd Viney coming out and putting that on the agenda. We're not going to receive assistance. This is us now, and watch us get through it. I like that statement.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind the confidence, but if we fast forward 3 months and North is still winless this year, I don't want to see any.
They're not a good team this year.
Yeah, but I don't want to see them backflip on that.
Yeah,
I want them to double down and say, yeah, it is going to take time, because as you said, and that is the most important thing, it will take time. And if we keep giving, take another priority pick, how many top end players are they going to have? In 2 or 3 years' time, they've already got about 14 or 15. I think it was 14 or 15 top 26 picks they will have had after this draft in the last 5 seasons.
Not all of them are going to land, but a lot of them have. I'll say.
And that's on you. So that's also on the club. So just because the club, I'm not saying this is North Melbourne, but you can't just keep giving a club more opportunities because they keep whiffing on who they pick. It's up to you to pick the right player. That's on every club. So, as you said, there's enough talent there that's through the door. They will grow together, and that's the most important thing. They are going to be good. There's no doubt about that. It's going to take some time. They're going to get more players this year. They're not going to be good next year. They're going to get more again, and then it's going to start building. And then you're going to start seeing all of these guys that are in their early to mid-20s, all around the same age, all developing at the same time, and they are going to be a good side. And I can see it happening right from here. Alistair Clarkson will be getting all the credit for it. So just know that that's going to happen.
Jumping back to Thursday night footy, and the last question of today, Jake, do you think the Suns should lobby for more home games in Darwin if they beat the Cats tonight and further improve their record over there?
Well, you would say yes, because if they beat the Cats, they will be 6-0, I believe, in the last 3 years. So obviously a perfect record. And I think the first year maybe they played a couple of poor. I think they played North and somebody else, so another poor side. So you can't take too much about that.
Yep.
Last year was Adelaide and the Bulldogs, so better teams. And this year, if they go and beat Geelong, despite Geelong missing some key players, you'll say, gee, they look like a totally different side up there. So should they be wanting to play more games there? Now, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the players want to play there.
I highly doubt it when you watch the type of footy that's being played over there. It's not too easy on the eye for the supporter back at home.
No, it's not. And if the AFL is serious about bringing a team into the Northern Territory in the near future,
what are they going to do? Change the weather up there?
Well, they're not going to both be playing up there. They're not going to. No. Gold Coast can't say, well, we want to play 5 games a year up there as well. They've obviously got contractual obligations to where they play at home anyway. So I don't know how much more they can do. Could it be another game? Do they play 3? The problem is, I think the reason 2 works well is because they do it as a back-to-back. I believe they stay up there for this period, so they'll play the back-to-back games, and then they're done with it. Plus, you get the benefit of having that, you're better for the run. You play it, you get used to the conditions, and then you play them again this weekend. And another reason why I think Gold Coast is a massive chance to win tonight.
Well, that's the thing. It's so difficult for teams to acclimatise going up there, but then it's another thing.
But they can't play 3 weeks in a row there. That's just not going to happen.
No, but then the Suns knowing how to play there and completely changing their game plan when they do play up there, which Christian spoke about on Tuesday's episode of the podcast. They do, they possess the ball a lot less given how slippery it is. They bang the ball forward. It's more inside 50s and less possession of the footy. And mucking around on the outside. So you couple all of that together and no wonder why teams are struggling and the Suns are winning while they're up there. But
you may find
trying to lobby for more games, it's just too scrappy, isn't it?
You might find that they'd rather play the better teams there because it brings them down a bit more to their level.
Levels it out, yeah.
If not to keep piling on North, but would you North of right now, not in North in 3 or 4 years, I know, but would you rather play North at home on the Gold Coast?
It lowers your standard of footy.
Lowers your standard, but they seem to be able to, acclimatise to be able to play in those conditions. Wouldn't you want to take the best sides and then that throws them off far more than it would your average side? I think that's something that could happen, where they look to play the better sides there rather than on the Gold Coast. But yeah, I just can't see a world in which they play any more than maybe 3 times there a year. Yep,
no, I agree. You're tipping the Suns, aren't you?
I am tipping the Suns. I think Gold Coast is a great chance tonight. Yeah. I really do. I know that they're the outsider. I actually said on Tuesday, I think that'll get closer to 50-50, and it has a little, probably not as much as I thought. Huge outs for Geelong. Yep. No forward line. I think Gold Coast will smash them in the midfield. And as we said, they played in these conditions last week. I think there's so many factors that make me believe this is a Gold Coast.
I've played it a little bit more safe than that. I'm just going to back Chris Scott. I reckon he's the best coach in the competition, which we also spoke about.
Dimmer, more flags?
Oh, come on. Get out of it. That's all we got time for. Thanks for your time. Again, Jake, get well and drink plenty of water tonight, mate. Get better soon.
I will.
Not going up to Sydney to cover the footy this week?
I am. Supposed to be going to Sydney tomorrow for the 2 games up there. Yep. So I'm hopefully feeling better by then.
Yeah, be good fun. Thanks to you again and to everyone at home listening. Thanks for you. Enjoy the footy and we'll speak to you next week.